Looks like Marianne Dugan is here.
Oh, yes. Hi, Marianne. She's from our budget committee.
Oh, okay.
Which, Marianne, the budget committee meeting in April approved the budget, and what's happening today is the board of directors will be taking a public hearing on the budget and then voting to adopt the budget. So the budget committee essentially did their work. So glad to hear, so you can see the vote that's taking place, but that's what's happening for today.
All right. So do we have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We got 5. So I think that's enough for quorum. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope everything is well for everybody. I'm going to call the LRAPA board meeting to order with roll call. Travis, please.
Yep, I will go through the screen as I see them on my screen. So we have Chair Joe Pictionary, Board Member Terry Fitzpatrick, Board Member Mike Fleck, Board Member Howard Saxon, Board Member Matt Keating, Board Member Joe Burney. We did have Board Member Janine Parisi just joined Vice Chair, so I will promote her to panelist. We have some LRAPA staff here: Steve, Julie, myself, Beth, Cassandra, Colleen, Debbie, Katie, Lance, Max, and Trinidad. And we have Christina Kratz from City of Eugene Legal Counsel today. And we have Springfield, excuse me, yeah. I'm sorry. Thank you. Jeff Kurtner, as well as Peter Nilsson, who are here in case they're needed for questions for some of the PERS agenda items. And we have Lydia, who is our minutes recorder with us. And from the public, we have James Hugo as a member of the public. And that's everyone present as of now.
And I didn't catch, did you catch Janine popping in?
Yep, she's right there.
Okay, there she is. Hi, Janine. So, all right, so thank you very much, Travis. Is there any adjustments to the agenda that we don't know about? I don't see anything. Steve, anything? Nothing? Okay. All right. Okay, sounds good. So we'll begin at the item number 3 for public participation. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this board?
We have James Hugo, and he has raised his hand. So I will allow him to give him permission to chat here. James, you can unmute your microphone and begin your 3 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, we can, James.
So I'm really concerned that I'm the only person of the public that's in this meeting right now. And the time frame where you have these meetings are really inconvenient. I feel that if we had evening meetings, there'd be a lot more public participation involved with this process. I really concerned that this board is not representing the whole amount of people in Lane County, especially the underprivileged, and like I'm very low income and disabled. So I've been complaining about International Paper for about 7 years now. And people in West Eugene were complaining about J.H. Baxter for like 20 years. And I really feel that maybe we need to have more members of the community board. I'd love to be a part of that. I think we should have more meetings set up, not just once a month, maybe like twice a month for the board. And I just, again, I feel that this is not representing everybody in Lane County. And I would really appreciate this board to take my concern serious. And I noticed, Terry, you're new to the Springfield board here, and I would love to maybe talk to you on the phone after.
Yeah, if you would like to, when we're done here, leave your phone number with Travis or one of the people, they could get in touch with me. I'll be happy to give you a call.
James, I don't know if you muted yourself, but you're on mute.
Yeah, James, you're on mute.
My bad. Okay. Sorry about that. Technological difficulty there. But yeah, there should be more people in the public like myself, because I know there's a lot more people that are concerned about LRAPA and what's actually happening behind the scenes. And there's a group called Beyond Toxics. I know there's a lot of people in that group that would love to be able to partake with this, the board and be part of a committee. But it just seems, I've heard feedback that the committee that exists right now doesn't really do anything for the public and doesn't have the community outreach it's supposed to. So I would love the board to maybe discuss that. And I know Beyond Toxic sent you a letter. I don't know if it's going to be discussed today or the next board meeting. But I definitely feel that there's more people besides myself that would be in this meeting right now if it was at a later time. And if the community groups were allowed to be more people like myself instead of just, people that are appointed or people with money. So, all right, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Next item would be the consent calendar. I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar. Oh, let's see. Yeah, the consent calendar, item number 4. We'll go on to item number 5 after that.
So moved.
It's been moved.
This is Howard. I'll second.
Thank you, Howard. It's been moved and seconded. Janine, you'd like to have discussion first? Okay.
Hey, thank you so much. Would request a quick modification to the minutes for the budget committee. So I don't know if you want to approve the remainder and just pull item B, or can we approve the entire with a slight edit?
I think we should go ahead and approve items A and C, pull B, and then discuss it, do an edification, and make a motion to approve that one by itself. So who had the motion originally?
I did. This is Matt.
Thanks, Matt. Could you edify your motion with pulling item number B and then remotion for A and C, please? Matt?
Okay, I can hear you now. My screen keeps freezing on me, Chair.
Uh-oh. Okay. So if you would like to modify, either retract your motion and make another motion for just A and C with B.
I'm happy to modify and move approval of A and C.
Thank you, sir. And I have a second, Howard, from you.
Yes, I second.
Great. So let's go with Janine. Do you have anything else? Okay, your hand was still up. So let's go with a signify. All of those in favor say aye.
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 And any opposed, turn your mic on and say nay.
I just turned my mic on in time to say aye.
All right, Joe. So any nays out there? All right. So the motion carries unanimously. So let's now discuss item number B. Janine, go ahead and let us know what your issues are with that, or what edifications you want to make to that.
Just a slight edit to the top of page 3. It reads, Janine expressed the need to clarify the status of Title V funding, which had been running on reserves. And the current language says, and question the benefit of the record. And I think what I meant to say was for the benefit of the record. So I sent that edit to Debbie. So it just would read for the benefit of the record.
Okay. Would someone like to make a motion with those edits, Janine? Would you like to do that?
I move to edit as previously stated.
Perfect. Do I hear a second? And I heard a second. I think that was from Matt. So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 This is your
Aye.
cue, Joe. You got it, Joe? Okay, got it. All those not in favor, make sure your microphones are on and signify by a nay. All right, looks like the motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Janine. And looks like the consent calendar is completed. moving on to item number 5, a public hearing for adoption of the proposed fiscal year 2023 budget. So before we open the public hearing, actually, before we open the public hearing, I need to ask staff to provide a brief description of the proposal, please.
Yes, Chair Joe, members of the board, Steve Dietrich for LRAPA, as recommended by the Budget Committee back on April 14th. I am presenting you with the budget for fiscal year 23. The total appropriation for all funds is $8,771,483 for your consideration today.
Thank you, Steve. And I would like to open the public hearing at this time. It's 12:27 on 5/12/2022 at 12:27. Anyone from the public wishing to speak on this matter?
Real quick, Joe, before we get into that, I just want to display the affidavit of public notice of the LB1 form that was published in the Register Guard on May 5th, 2022 of this month.
Okay. Is there anyone present that wishes to speak either in support of or opposition to the proposed budget?
The only members of the public we have here today is James. And James, if you would like to speak on the budget, raise your hand and I'll give you permission to unmute so you can do so. Okay, his hand is up.
Well, I haven't looked at the document, so I'm not going to ask them any questions, but the concern I have, and I have one question is, with all that money every year, why can't LRAPA go pay for 8 more air monitoring stations like the NCOR systems and have them placed in hot spots around Lane County that are being really affected by greenhouse gas emissions, like International Paper Complex and J.H. Baxter? So with all that money, these air monitoring stations like the Canary project only less than $6,000 per unit. And so it's like $8 million or more in the budget. I don't understand why LRAPA cannot find the finances to get more air monitoring stations in place in Lane County so we can all know exactly what we're breathing and know exactly how the environment's being impacted by greenhouse gas emissions at factories and mills. So that's my question.
Thank you for your comments, James. We're not allowed to respond at this time. This is a time where you can make comments. So is there anyone else, Travis, from the public wishing to speak to the budget?
There are no other members of the public here. If anybody else would like to raise your hand, and I'll give you that permission to unmute so you can do so. I don't see any other hands going up, Joe.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm going to close the public hearing at this time. It is now 12:29. So is there any discussion from the board regarding the proposed budget? And I see Mike's hand up. Go for it, Mike.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board adopt resolution number 22-04-A.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Janine. It's been moved by Mike Fleck to adopt the budget and seconded by Janine. Was his words adequate, Travis, based on, I see the script has got a little bit different wording, but I think it covers what we need.
I believe so, Chair Joe, the intent of being just to adopt resolution number 22-04-A, which is what he said.
Yep, sounds good. Mr. Burney, I'm sorry, Commissioner Burney.
That's more like it, Mr. Pictionary. I'm sorry, Councilor Pictionary. I just before we vote on this, Steve, I think that there's probably a logical answer to the question that was raised by the public, but I would just like to hear that answer so that no one feels their voice wasn't heard, and then we can vote on the motion, if that's okay.
Members of the board, Chair Joe, I will certainly give you a response related to the comment. The $8 million budget covers a lot of things on top of any kind of monitoring that we do. The ambient monitoring that LRAPA administers in Lane County is more than adequate to cover the population centers of Lane County from a national ambient air quality standard and an EPA perspective. There are also other monitors in place besides those 8 monitoring stations that have to meet EPA requirements. There are, I don't know the exact number, a lot of purple air monitors located around places in Eugene and Springfield and possibly even in Lane County to have more places to monitor particulate matter emissions. And I'll pause there.
Thank you, Steve. Is that satisfactory, Commissioner Burney?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. All right. Do you have any other questions? You still have your hand up.
No, I don't. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Okay. So it's been motioned and seconded. All those in favor of approving the budget signify by aye.
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 And all those opposed, make sure your microphones are turned off and signify by the same sign. Okay, it looks like it's approved unanimously with the board. Thank you very much, folks. Next item is item number 6 from the PERS agreement.
All right, let's see. So Travis, we do have Jeff Kerner and Peter are they coming in as panelists?
Yep, I'm just doing that right now.
All right, so what we have is we have worked with PERS and we have come up with an agreement that is presented to you in this staff report. I do have PERS with us today, as well as Jeff Kertner, who is an attorney for Hirschner Hunter, who reviewed the agreement. Jeff's been helping us review some of our benefits currently at LRAPA and some of these old time agreements that are out there. So we did ask him to review this agreement. And we also have Christina. Mary Bridget couldn't be with us today. So Christina is here representing legal from the city of Springfield. The staff report does have a lot of the background on it that we had previously discussed in our meetings from November, December, and again in January. What is new is we do have the final count of our employees that are interested in moving into PERS. We basically have 14 that have an interest, so more than a majority. I have one pending retirement coming up. And so what I did in the costing this time is I have excluded that employee and I have put in a vacant position for a new hire expected around July 1st. So the staff report does present you with pretty much a more accurate accounting. I did have PERS run through their simulation again of the costs. And the costs are slightly less than what was presented previously. And so what I show, especially over a long period of time, it does present, and again, we cannot control everything in the market, but it does present an opportunity for LRAPA in the future to see some reduction in costs of these retirement programs. So we have provided you, I've got some experts again here online to answer questions. We've also provided you with a resolution as a board, and what the resolution is doing which is something that was asked for in January, is a resolution is saying board agrees and the board gives authorization for Chair to sign the agreement with PERS. So what PERS needs is the agreement to be signed by the chair. So what you as a board has asked for is to have a resolution in order for Chair Joe to do that. I did want to point out a couple things on the agreement. And again, then we can go through them if folks have questions. So the agreement follows the resolution. And on the agreement, the first whereas on the agreement is what we had originally put in our resolution back in January when it was signed. So that was the information that PERS received. We are not intending to move the use of the sick leave, unused sick leave benefit. So Travis, if you scroll down, the agreement should be there. Below, one more, right below. So we are not intending, since 100% of our current folks will go in as OPSERT, we are not intending to use this unused sick leave benefit, which is something for tier 1, tier 2 folks. We were not intending to participate in the state and local government rate pool. We were going to stay independent. And our employees already pay the 6% into their retirement account, into the Voya account. So we would continue that. So we don't have any issues where the agency was paying that 6%. And we need to make changes to it. We are going to, we would like to continue business as usual with that. In the next paragraph under the therefore, important is we are saying that all employees hired July 1st or after would join PERS. So we are anticipating on doing a recruitment for a position, and the hire date will be July 1st or after for that employee. I also have provided you with a list of the current positions that are set to join PERS on the transition date. Let's see. The other important piece of this is from our January meeting is that we had talked about the begin date of April 1st of 2022. So as you're approving this one, that is the date that is written on this agreement. And if you move down to number 5A, this is where it talks about our initial contribution of 9.77. So we have, that was within line with what we were given in January. I've also heard 9.63. So we are watching these rates really closely, and Peter can address that if there's questions on that rate. Number 6 goes into the IAP, which is the employee contribution. Number 8 clarifies that sick leave. Sorry if I'm going a little quick, Travis. There you go. Number 8 clarifies the sick leave, but basically the way we have it set up is PERS will not recognize unused sick leave. And LRAPA does work on a PTO basis. So we don't actually have individual sick leave balances. So this just makes it a lot easier as we move forward, if it is approved that we move into PERS. And then again, number 14 has the agreement date of 4/1 of 22. So that is quickly the agreement. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to review it or not. What's attached is attachment A. Those are the positions. Those are current employees outside of the ineligible employees. So I do have the other staff on the line with us. So if anybody, I'll turn it back over to you, Joe, if there's anybody that wants to do questions.
Yep. Got a thank you, Julie. I've got a couple in queue. Howard first, followed by Mike.
Yeah, there wasn't a link to this document in the agenda, and unless it was sent out separately, I have not seen it. So I was curious about that. And then second, I just had a question about PERS rates, given that the stock market is down about 20%, and all of us who are retired are taking a hit on our IRAs. But I was just curious, with the market being so volatile, how does that going to affect PERS rates? And when do PERS rates, when are they reevaluated, and when would any adjustments be incurred by an agency such as LRAPA.
Okay, so, and I apologize about the link. It was put up on Monday. So if we could get an email, or if somehow, Debbie, if we could get those attachments for folks to be able to read.
Yeah, because there wasn't an email that I recall being sent out with this document. So I'm a little concerned that we're talking about it today and haven't had an opportunity to review it in advance.
Howard, sorry to interject here. It was in the agenda, and the links on my agenda worked. So,
well, the agenda that Travis sent out for the meeting, I didn't have a link on mine, so I don't know what happened.
Okay, let's see. I don't know if Travis, if we can get him the backup. However, great question. And I knew we were going to have that question today. And so, Peter, I know you and I talked about that this morning. Can you address the market issue?
Yes, to get to the more specific question that Mr. Saxon had, it was the rates change on the 1st of July in every odd numbered year. And so right now, the rates that are current will expire on June 30th of 2023, and then the new rates will go into effect on July 1 of 2023. So that's how they change, and they basically change as a result of the actuarial valuations that are completed. I think it's the 2021 actuarial evaluation that came out recently that actually suggests the rates that will go into effect. And so right now, I don't think we actually have an actuarial evaluation report for the agency, just because the agency isn't a participant, but that will be completed prior to that time. But what happens is the actuaries basically use a long window of time, and they use financial models that include market cycles of the kind that we've been seeing in recent years. Obviously, there's been a huge loss of market value in the last week or so. Prior to that, of course, the market was running pretty high. But there's also a concept called rate collaring. And I would actually, what I can do is, as part of this discussion, maybe point you to things that you can look at, because it is a complicated system. But there's rate collars essentially prevent employer rates from going up more than a specific percentage in any new biennium. And so I'll get that for you. But looking at this long-term picture, the market upturns and downturns do have an impact on what rates will be set going forward. But they're looking at a lengthy actuarial experience period of, like, I think 25 or 30 years. And so the rates themselves typically don't change that much. But of course, if the market were to continue to lose value significantly like it did in 2008, you would see rates be impacted to some extent. And Mary Michelle would probably be the better person to actually explain how much they can change based upon how much of a drop in the market value there is. Of course, the PERS fund is invested by the Oregon Investment Council. Actually, it's managed by the Oregon State Treasury under the direction of the Oregon Investment Council, and the fund's average return on investments over the past 20 years is actually in excess of the assumed rate, which is presently at 7.2%. It's been that way since 2018. As you may know, the assumed rate used to be 8%, but in the last 8 or so years, it's been moving downward to take into account the fluctuations that the market has seen. What's kind of interesting is, the lion's share of the unfunded actuarial liability in the system is related to the tier 1, mostly, and some tier 2 accounts, and those people who retired years ago when money match calculation method was actually driving benefits that equaled to or exceeded what people were making at the time that they retired. And under this new OPSERP program, if people work 30 years, they're entitled to 45% of their final average salary. And so the unfunded actuarial liability that has plagued the system is the result of what was happening back in the 90s and then the early 2000s. Obviously, the market downturn in 2008 had a temporary impact upon rates. The legislature has actually acted to expand the payback period so that it could actually not have as great an impact on employer rates as it might have earlier. There's a tension that runs between when the board lowers rates, like the assumed rate, because what that means is that they're going to assume that the investments make less money over time. And what that does is it drives up the actuarial liability that can cause rates to be increased. So it's a rather interesting tension that results there, more than I could possibly explain, because I'm not that much of the expert in that regard specifically. Mary Michelle is probably the better person in that regard, but secondly, it's just a lot of information. Looking at the fact that the OPSERP pension program is far less generous than the tier 1 retirements that we were seeing years ago. Obviously, the fund has to manage a certain expected performance in order to keep rates absolutely stable. So there's always a concern that rates can and do go up. Right now, the what we see on typical accounts, or I should say employer accounts, isn't the percentage of unfunded actuarial liability that's built into employer rates is actually rather low compared to the tier 1 and tier 2s.
Thank you, Peter. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Fleck, followed by Joe Burney.
Well, I was going to keep my mouth shut as quiet as to not stir the pot, but you know me, I can't do that. So I apologize. I apologize, guys. So I want to make it really clear. So item 6 says that we're going to reduce the salaries based on that 6%. So we're going to pay the 6% and reduce employees by that 6%. So the agency is not, I repeat, not responsible for those contributions, correct?
That's how the agreement reads currently, correct?
Correct, but that is already happening. That has always been, the employees have paid their VOIA.
Okay, no, I'm making it really clear in the public meeting.
Yeah.
I apologize.
Yep.
So later on, and I apologize, I don't have that. It also talks about all eligible employees will be involved in this. So it seems to me that initially we had folks who did not want to join PERS. And if I'm reading this contract correctly, they will be required to enter PERS. Am I reading that wrong?
I believe so, if I may respond, in that the agreement, to my mind, and I am sure to our attorney's mind as well as Julie's, basically defines who is an eligible employee. And so right now, the people who are presently employees, but who are not on the list that's attached as the exhibit to the agreement, anyone who's not attached to that list who is currently employed and will have been hired on or before, well, we'll say before July 1, is not going to be eligible for PERS membership. Only those people on the list and those people hired on or after July 1 would be eligible for PERS.
Okay, thank you for that. And I guess just the last thing, I'll just reiterate, you know, item 4 basically says the legislature can, and I am absolutely certain will change this when the unfunded liabilities for the other programs are not making ends meet and the only workers are in also, that's the only place they're going to be able to pull these funds. So I think that the numbers shown in the expected, I find it kind of comical, to be honest, but you know, I hope I'm wrong. So I will just say I fully will vote no on this again. And I thank you for your patience.
I would not disagree with anything that you've just said. I will note that the legislature back in 2019 Senate Bill 1049 was really interesting because it was the first time that the legislature actually decided to take from what the employees were contributing to their IEP accounts, and that actually did have some impact upon employer rates and the unfunded actuarial liability. So it was interesting to see them open that door such that tier 2 and tier 1 members are actually contributing 2.5% of their 6%, which is to say almost half of their contributions to the basically, I can't remember what the fund is called, but essentially it's to stabilize the giant fund, and then officer members are presently contributing 0.75% of their salaries to that stabilization fund. Thank you. So it'll be interesting to see how they respond in the future to what happens, actuarially speaking. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. And I have Commissioner Burney with his hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I think Mike brings up a ton of good points. I'm going to probably be voting yes, but here are my concerns. And Peter, I don't see you, but I hear you. Let me lay this out and then tell me why the sky is not falling. One, there's 40% more dollars printed and circulating in the economy now than there were 3 years ago. We're starting to see inflation eat away, eat away at everything. Ukraine is the breadbasket of the world, and we see what's happening there. We're seeing food prices go out of control. The used car I purchased 5 years ago, it was used then, is worth more now than when I purchased it. So as I see all this going on, and we are in probably some of the most uncertain economic times that I have ever lived through, tell me we shouldn't be concerned about this unfunded liability.
I'm probably not going to tell you to not be concerned about this unfunded actuarial liability. I think that the PERS system, as amended by the legislature, is sustainable. But you know, I'm not a big fan of how things are being run in terms of our overall nation's or world economy. It's hard to be hopeful when you see the market tumbling like it has in recent days. I don't know that I'm hopeful in terms of the near future of markets. But that being said, the stock market isn't the only place in which funds are invested. The Oregon Investment Council has done, I believe, a remarkably good job over decades and decades of investing the PERS fund. I don't know where it stands now in terms of how many tens of billions of dollars it is. I think it's in the neighborhood of $70 billion that's invested. But I think that they've shown historically that they're responsible, and I wouldn't expect that to change. I just think that their history speaks for itself. And yes, the markets go up and markets go down. Right now, they're going down. But right now, I think that the people who are in charge of the way that these things go, I mean, I think that they've got plans to address how things are going. I think there's always a concern when markets are down that the sky really is falling this time, but somehow, you know, we wake up later on and somehow the world continues and the markets do actually rebound.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Joe. Any more questions from the board before looking for a motion? Okay, seeing none, does anybody have a motion on this matter? Okay, I'll make, go ahead, whoever.
This is Howard. I'll move that we approve the proposed resolution, which would convert LRAPA staff to PERS.
Second.
Thank you, Howard. And it's been seconded. Was that you, Matt?
Correct.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to approve the proposal for the proposal to move to PERS. Janine, you have a hand up? Go ahead.
Just a few questions before we vote. The additional $22,458 or whatever that number is, where's that money coming from, Julie? And is there any problem with this being kind of retroactive to April 1st, or should this be for today's date? I don't personally have strong feelings about it, but I was just kind of curious if the April 1st date conveyed some value because it's a 6-month process or something. I just couldn't remember. There was some transition time. So if you can remind me about the April 1st date, and then where are we resourcing this additional money that we need? That'd be helpful. Thank you.
Right. So during the budget process, we did present that we have a vacant position in the administrative finance staff. And in line with us getting our new finance system, I believe that can be a sustainable reduction in FTE. So I've got 30,000 actually set aside to manage this PERS. So that's where that contingency is. If we in fact fill that position, it may be part-time. I've got to look at everything as a whole. The start date was originally January, but that was too quick. So we, in that discussion in January, we went to April 1st. I don't believe that you can pick the date. We could go to July 1st. There is a 6-month waiting period. And so basically I just need to balance the 2 retirement programs as we move to which date is settled on. But the first of a month would be the best. I think, Peter, you probably say that, right? We should pick up first of the month.
I don't think I've ever seen a participation date other than the first of the month. So I think that's exactly right.
Okay, Janine, did that take care of your question? Okay. So based on what Julie just said, is there a need to modify the proposal to have a different start date, or are we still assuming it's going to be April 1?
So if that triggered anything substantial, I don't think it makes a material difference. It just starts the clock a little sooner is my understanding. And that seems to be a good thing to do at this point if we're moving forward.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Yes, I agree. Okay, so we have a motion before the board that's been seconded. I'm looking for a vote. All those in favor signify by yay or hands up.
Yay.
Okay. Matt, what do we got from you?
Yay.
Okay. And those opposed signify same.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Travis, do you have a count for us?
Yes, so all those who voted in favor were Chair Pictionary, Vice Chair Parisi, Board Member Howard Saxon, Board Member Matt Keating, and Board Member Joe Burney. And those who voted in opposed, Board Member Mike Fleck and Board Member Terry Fitzpatrick.
Thank you, sir. It appears that the motion carries by majority of the vote. Next item is going to be, it looks like I'll go down on my paper here. Well, it says at 12:50, we're running a little behind, which is fine. So dashboard report, please.
As Chair Joe, members of the board, I will present the dashboard, which we do semi-annually or every 6 months. And looking at the National Ambient Air Quality Standards, Clean Air Act goals, I call your attention to the first one there is about ozone. And we are in compliance with the ozone standard from the National Ambient Air Quality Standard, even though the standards are set at 70 since October of 2015, we're well below that standard, so we're in good shape there. Moving on to the next Clean Air Act goal is to maintain compliance with the annual PM 2.5 standard. It's currently set at 12.0 micrograms per cubic meter, and it's on an annual average. The EPA's Clean Air Scientific Advisory Committee is recommending tightening of the standard in the not too distant future. If that happens, we will be using 2023 and through 2025 ambient data to compare to the standard. It's anticipated that standards may again place Oak Ridge close to violating the standard of the NAAQS based on the data we've seen so far. But for the time being, the standards are being met in Eugene, Springfield, Cottage Grove, and Oak Ridge. Moving on to the next standard, which is to maintain compliance with the 24-hour PM 2.5 and PM 10 standard. Our levels here in Lane County continue to be below the standard in Eugene, Springfield, Cottage Grove, and Oak Ridge. However, every year when we have wildfires large enough and long enough, they do affect, wildfires can cause us to go beyond the 24-hour PM 2.5 standards specifically. And the standards right now for PM 2.5 is set at 35 and PM 10 is set at 150 micrograms per cubic meter. There is a notice of proposed rulemaking that we've managed to get through with EPA to set Oak Ridge in the Westford area to redesignate as attainment and have a maintenance plan approved for both PM 2.5 and PM 10. That was signed by the EPA administrator in Region 10 on April 25th. So that was a large accomplishment and a lot of years worth of work to get to this point. And both of those plans were actually published in the Federal Register. I think one was published, PM 2.5 was published on May 5th. And then the PM 10 maintenance plan was published on May 9th. And they're posted for 30 days to take public comment. What happens after that is, depending on whether or not there's comments that are received that EPA has to address, they will then place something in another notice in the Federal Register to finally approve the maintenance plans. However, which is, you know, we fully anticipate that to happen, by the way. Whether it happens within in the next 30 to 40 days or happens later this summer, depending on when comments are received, if they are, we anticipate by fall that our maintenance plans will be approved, which will be a great accomplishment. And then, again, just to note that EPA's, again, Clean Air Scientific Advisory Committee recommends tightening the PM 10 standard for the 24-hour. And that, what that value will be will dictate whether or not we are coming close to that standard. But so far, we're in good shape when it comes to our ambient data so far. And if we had to compare to the new standard, if it's set by EPA in the near future, we will again use the 2023, 2025 ambient data to compare to the National Ambient Air Quality Standards to determine compliance. So any questions on those so far? I can move on. Okay. Again, on the Clean Air Act goal, this time it's complete the state implementation plan work. Just notifying here that the draft Oak Ridge Westford redesignation request and the maintenance plans that were signed by the administrator are moving forward as planned, as I just described, which is in the right direction. We're getting into maintenance rather than non-attainment. Also, what's noted here is another targeted airshed grant for the Oak Ridge area to the amount of $2.73 million was awarded by EPA to LRAPA in March of this year. That's to add to the first TAG grant that was awarded back in 2019 of $5 million. So that will allow us to continue a lot of work that has been successful so far. And then moving on to continued development in the next Clean Air Act goal, continued development and implementation of Oak Ridge Air Targeted Airshed Grant. So work's being done on homes in Oak Ridge Westford. The Oak Ridge Air Program is working on this third cohort of homes through the program. The challenge has been recently, vendors are willing to work in the Oak Ridge is lower than desired due to demand of work in more local Eugene, Springfield areas. LRAPA, Good Company, and other Oak Ridge Air partners are coordinating efforts and trying to modify policies to maintain and garner interest in working with the program. COVID-19, the prices of materials, the shortage of contractors has all contributed to the unwillingness, if you will, for vendors to do work in Oak Ridge. In spite of that, the program has managed to entertain and look at over 250 qualification questionnaires for homes to actually qualify for the program. And there's currently 48 homes now enrolled in the program. I'm making these corrections as I go on some of these numbers because we had a meeting yesterday on the Oak Ridge Air that we have semi-annually, and these numbers are being updated since yesterday. So we've made some additional progress. Initial home energy audits are up to 33 there from the 29. The wood stoves installed, we're at 6. And then the ductless heat pumps installed, or electrical version of heat rather than heat pump or other versions of getting heat, are up to 15. Homes that are weatherized, we're at 6. And then the final post audits at 3, and then completed homes at 5. So you see the progress that's starting to accumulate through time. The program started out slowly, but now it's starting to gain some momentum. And I've already mentioned that, stated before, that on the rest of the report on this Clean Air Act goal is the $2.73 million for the second TAG grant to be awarded. And I'll stop there. For any questions. If not, I'll move on to the Air Toxics and Clean Air Oregon priorities. Here we're going to continue to develop and implement programs, rules, and fee structures for area source requirements from EPA. In this case, they're called the National Emission Standards for Hazardous Air Pollutants, or NESHAPs. It's an ongoing process when EPA finalizes a new or modifies an old NESHAP standard to actually add those and include those in any permitting or regulatory requirements that we need to make sure our permits and our regulations are up to date. So we're continue to do that work. We also compare modeled on the next priority, air toxics concentrations in the National Air Toxics Assessment, or NADA, with the local air toxics monitoring data that we actually collect. Hasn't been a whole lot of newer activity since the 2014 NADA results from EPA, and that was compared to the 2015 toxics monitoring. And then in 2017, we added the Oregon legislature approved funding for air toxics monitoring in Eugene and 5 other areas of Oregon. And that summary of that data was actually added to our website last year. And there's been no new update there. The NADA results don't come out that often from EPA, so it's hard to compare data that's more current than the data we collect, because they kind of run behind the calendar years that we actually do our monitoring in. Moving on to the next priority is the implementation of the Clean Air Oregon program itself. As you know, from November 2019 on, staff at LRAPA have publicized the ranking to prioritize call-in of existing sources that are already here and operating. Announced the first 10 facilities to be called in. So far, 5 facilities have been called in of that existing list. And you see them there listed with J.H. Baxter, Seneca Sustainable Energy, Willamette Valley Company, Hexion, and Emerald Forest Products. And then we had one more recently that's a new source rather than an existing source, called Archimoto, that's being added to the list. Regulations are different in Clean Air Oregon now that it's underway, that if you're a new source, you have to go through the program right away rather than as an existing source and being called in a certain priority group. So there is a difference in how the programs are run, new versus existing. And the Archimoto, for those of you that may not know about this facility, it's going to be located in Eugene. I think in the, let's see, I can't remember the name of the Chambers area. I think it is, that's where it's going to be. It's a new permit to go through Clean Air Oregon. Some of these facilities are still trying to get their risk assessments worked out. And some of those facilities have been approved. So the risk assessment is due for Willamette Valley Company, for example, is due next week. And we've already approved Seneca Sustainable Energy's risk assessment back in September of 2021, and we're going to include those Cleaner Air Oregon conditions in their Title V permit later this year. So we're starting to make progress on these types of facilities with this newer program, Cleaner Air Oregon, to address air toxics. Any questions
Steve,
there?
Yeah, Steve, I think Janine's got her hand up.
Okay, Janine.
The air toxics data that's online, am I looking at that correctly? That this is, even though we don't have the NADA baseline is still 2014, are those charts that are on there, is that 2020 data from air toxic monitors, that the one monitor that we have in Eugene, is that correct?
I'm going to ask if Lance is available, if he can answer that question.
And I bring this up just because, you know, we've heard testimony from a couple of different people and just the whole JX Baxter debacle about toxics and hotspots, and, you know, the current, you know, I've been talking about the contemporariness of the data that it, you know, there's a significant lag in what we collect and then what we present. So that's kind of the basis of the question.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Lance. Yeah, that 2020 data is the most current data we have, and it is actual data from our two air toxics monitoring sites. It's kind of averaged. We have the one over in West Eugene, near Baxter, near JH Baxter site, and then the one at Amazon Park. And so both of those have the most current data, and it's all based on yearly averages. The 2021 data is just about finalized, and we'll be able to add that to that page also.
Thank you, Lance. I appreciate that. And then my second question had to do with Cleaner Air Oregon. So I saw that Seneca Sustainable Energy's risk assessment has been approved and plans to include the CAO conditions in the Title V permit renewal. So what would be the conditions? I guess I'm trying to understand, and if this is too off topic, maybe we can have a conversation at a future, maybe this is new business, but I'm curious. So once the risk assessment's complete, then there's new permitting requirements. So for that particular source, what additional permitting requirements will be placed on that facility based on the risk assessment?
So Chair Joe and members of the board, Janine, we are still in the process of figuring out what those conditions are going to be. We probably could have a more detailed discussion with you, but in the not too distant future, we're going to embark on a pretty aggressive and pretty wide community engagement effort, not only with the communities in and around Seneca Sustainable Energy, but we'll certainly keep the board members informed, because this facility has been in the spotlight before for different reasons, and we're not going to shy away from that at all, but we're going to make sure we inform everyone along the way how the process works and how it affects not only their health, but how it affects the permit as well. So, and I don't,
is IP on the list for being called in? I just saw the 5.
Yes, International Paper is on the list. I believe they are due to be called in towards the end of this calendar year or the beginning of next year. And Max, if you're on, if you wanted to confirm that, you could.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Go ahead.
That's cool. That's correct.
Okay, moving on to another priority under air metrics. What I can say here is that you know, the goal here, the priority is to maintain self-supporting operation at break even or better production. I will say that the COVID-19 and competitors with enhanced technology continue to pose a challenge. Our mini-vol tactical air samplers sales have leveled off at a 12-month average of about 10 units per month, which is about 1 unit per month greater than March of 2021. It's also important to stress the importance of the Asia market. Can't be overstated. That new partnerships are being developed and old ones are strengthened, that we need to continue to do that. And we're hoping that, we expect that the launching of our new website that we're designing right now will positively affect the sampler sales by fiscal year 2023. And I'll stop there in case there's questions on this.
I have a recollection from former Director Huff that the kind of break-even point was something like 16 samplers per month. Is that still the case?
Janine, that's a good question. I'm not sure if Trinidad could speak to that if he's on.
Yeah, so that number was based on, historically was based on additional salaries being allocated to the Air Metrics Fund when the sales were healthier. Those salaries are no longer allocated to the budget, so that has dropped the monthly average to around 11 or 12 units per month to sustain a self-supporting operation.
Thank you for that.
Okay. Any more questions on Air Metrics, or I'm going to move on? Okay. Moving on to agency administrations and other goals and initiatives. Maintain industrial source LRAPA rules. So on a regular frequency, we Cleaner Air Oregon rules, were adopted back in March of 2019 and approved by the Environmental Quality Commission in May of 2019. DEQ then revised their Cleaner Air Oregon rules in 2021. LRAPA's reviewed those changes and implementing them now. There were no changes to LRAPA's rules that were required back then. Recently, EPA approved LRAPA's delegation to request for authority on August of 2020 to use DEQ's rules by reference to implement new and revised federal standards, especially when it comes to the NESHAPs or the new source performance standards that EPA revises on a regular frequency. And EPA has not yet approved LRAPA's May 2021 request to get that delegation. So in April 2022, last month, the EQC adopted changes that were intended to correct some of the definitions or terms in the rules that would make EPA's delegation approval a little easier for LRAPA's needs. So that's what we're in the middle of trying to do right now, so that whenever a change comes from EPA or actually from DEQ as well, that there's a smoother transition to maintain that delegation of authority, so that we're regulating at the same level as DEQ is. So that's ongoing. The next goal or initiative is to maintain financial stability and the viability of LRAPA, develop a multi-year budget projection annually. So the 5-year multi-year forecast is updated each January. I believe the board was presented with the most recent financial information during the January 22 meeting. That's what Julie has informed me of, to make sure that's a true statement. And so we're meeting that goal. And then the next priority is to maintain a full staffing complement of LRAPA. And we did, I think Julie mentioned earlier that there's one vacancy at the administrative assistant level that we still need to fill. And we're doing a needs assessment and to currently take place before we actually fill that position and actually recruit it and then move forward. And then the last one here on this page, keep financial reserves at 120 calendar days at a minimum. Despite the concerns due to COVID-19 pandemic, LRAPA is in a solid financial position. However, we're monitoring the funding for the Title V program due to the reduced sources and the current fee structure that's not keeping up with the increased costs to run the program. Currently, our Title V reserve fees are at 105 days rather than the 120. So we're watching this carefully. Just so I can add to give you perspective, DEQ's watching their Title V very closely because their deficit is much larger than ours. And I'm ready to move on. And I think that's the end of our dashboard.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next agenda item is yours as well, I believe, Steve. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's the advisory committee. So we can get a report from the advisory committee, please.
Okay. Pardon me. We met in person and remotely. It was a hybrid meeting, which I thought went very well. We had intended to
interview a CAC candidate, but he was not able to make it. That was his second miss. And we're gonna try one more time to see if we can interview him. And meanwhile, Ronnie Joel has withdrawn. I believe there's some miscommunication about the process and what the committee was asking for. And Travis made an effort to reach out to her and correct the misconceptions, but she was done with it. And then also we finalized the gas powered tool fact sheet, which there's a copy, there it is. And so we voted to present this to you and ask for it to be approved as final.
Howard's got a question, and I have a question. Go ahead, Howard.
Well, I have a couple. One, I read the minutes, and there was a motion about using Build Back Better funds and promoting, I guess, subscribe burns. And there was part of the resolution was discussing good smoke versus bad smoke. And I don't understand what that is, because smoke is bad regardless of whether it was from prescribed burns or wildfires. So I was pretty puzzled by that. And then the other comment I have on the flyer, I just want to say that I think you guys have done a great job. It's really difficult to put a flyer together that's concise and well understood. With that, though, I view one discussion in there about battery-powered tools and having a lesser, or say battery-powered tools, a lesser environmental impact. But they say that, you had a comment in there about, let me see if I can find it. I'm looking at it on my screen here, but what's up? But I think it's on the second page. There's a comment about corded tools being better because you don't have to mine materials for the batteries. Well, that may be true, but corded tools, you still have an extension cord that may be 50 to 100 feet long that you have to schlep around. And, that's using mined copper and fossil fuels for the plastic and all that. And I think it's kind of almost an editorial comment, and I don't think it really adds value. And I would suggest maybe taking a look at that and maybe just deleting that reference, and because there's a lot of factors in using electric tools, and cordless has benefits over corded, and the corded may have some benefits over batteries. So I thought that was a little superfluous, if you will.
So,
okay, good.
If I could respond then, to the prescribed burning, I was going to get to that. And I was a little concerned about the initial submittal being in the minutes as was, because I was afraid it would be a distraction. And we took a step back from that whole thing. And what we wanted to do was ask the board's permission to look into prescribed burning issues and ways that we could look at the benefits and downsides to it, and if there would be an advantage to the agency doing some education around the issue.
Yeah, my comment is that LRAPA is a regulatory agency, and I would be very concerned about the agency, other than educating people on the fact that wood smoke has significant health impacts regardless of the source. And I'd be concerned about it being perceived, LRAPA, in any way is advocacy or suggesting the value of prescribed burns when that's really not in their wheelhouse. Anyway, I'd be concerned about that. Other than educating the public about the regulatory aspects of when prescribed burns can be allowed based on meteorological conditions.
Thank you, Howard. So my comment too is actually, it was in the same area, but I'm trying to figure the downside in regards to where you have that insert with corded powered tools. I think that they are a better alternative to gas powered tools. And, you know, the length of cord, et cetera, just never bothered me, but I think that people should be aware that unless you're making a misstatement here, that electric power tools with power cords is worse or better than gas. I think they're for sure better than gas.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you know, we did some discussion about the issues with mining the rare earth minerals for cordless tools. And I was actually pretty proud of the wording there, that we gave a nod to the issue, but largely let it be because it's not strictly an air emission concern. But anybody who wants to investigate it further could do that.
I'm not disagreeing with you, Joe or Jim. I think we would be in la land to think that lithium batteries are awesome and that they're the answer because of the environmental impact that's created through those mining, even though, you know, it may not impact us here in the United States too much, but it impacts across the world. So I think this pamphlet this handout looks fine to me. I appreciate the work. Janine, followed by Mike.
I am really glad to see that this pamphlet has been generated. I know that there's been a lot of discussion and back and forth about the pros and cons and trying to balance and use, you know, good scientific information to help educate the community. So thank you for taking that on. I'm sensitive and sympathetic to the comment that Howard just made, and I wanted to ask, without, you know, getting into an editing of a document that's already been probably very vetted, if that thing on corded power tools, instead of saying an even better alternative, if you could just neutralize it and say that they are another alternative. I think that you've already talked about the reasons why and the trade-offs, that I'm just throwing that out there for consideration if that's an easy fix to maybe address some of those concerns. But mostly I want to say thank you for putting this together, and I'm happy to, we can always iterate and improve over time.
Well, we're open to whatever edits you want to suggest. And I should note that the committee itself came up with a draft, or members of the committee came up with a draft, but Travis took that draft and brought it up to the next level. So much of what you see here is thanks to him.
Just on that good smoke, bad smoke thing caught my attention too. So thanks, Jim, for like saying, hey, don't get too distracted by that. I'd like maybe a little bit more of a conversation about what the role of LRAPA would be in supporting additional funding for prescribed burns. I mean, there's going to be a ton of money coming down through the state and the federal government for wildfire reduction and prescribed burning. And I see LRAPA as a, the role we have here is wildfire smoke is terrible and it's completely uncontrolled, and people have few options to avoid it if you're inundated. So clearly there's a public health issue here that we should be concerned about. But I'm also kind of just curious about maybe thinking through a little bit more how LRAPA would, support prescribed burning and kind of where this is coming from. So probably don't have time for that today, but it could be right for a little bit more discussion.
Yeah, the main thrust of the initial idea was education, and where it spoke to funds, it was thinking about advertising as part of the education. But we really took a step back from that and just want to look at the issue in general, and then could start focusing in on things that would be appropriate to the agency.
Thank you, Jim. So I've got Mike and Howard, and we are now at 1:31, which is when we typically would adjourn. So Mike, go ahead, and Howard.
So I guess I hate to say this, but I'm seeing some hypocrisy here, that we have no regulatory authority over gas-powered tools, yet it's okay to produce this piece of information, yet we don't want to get into a discussion around prescribed burns because we don't have any authority over that. I'm sorry, I as a rural person, I don't support, changing. I mean, I have a Stihl chainsaw that I spent $500 on, and I have no plans on getting rid of it, because out in the rural areas, putting a cord in to actually be able to use that is not a practical option, and neither is battery power packs. So I guess I'm okay with this flyer because I think anything we can do is good, but I also see prescribed burns as something that, from a health standpoint, getting rid of fuels at a time when the wind is carrying that smoke out of areas, as opposed to the inundations that we've had, seems like also a big benefit. So like I said, I'm not saying I have a position one way or another on either of these items, other than it's a little hypocritical to choose one way on one item and another on the other. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Howard.
Yeah, I don't want to micro edit here, but on the top of the flyer, there's emissions estimates from 2011. And I don't know if those are nationwide or not, but like 20,700 pounds of fine particulate matter from gas-powered tools. That seems to me extraordinarily small. And I just wondered if those emissions that are cited in the flyer are actually correct or not, because they all seem pretty low to me from a nationwide standpoint. So I guess I'd ask to maybe double check those.
Well, it's straight from an EPA study in 2015, and it is nationwide.
Yeah,
excuse me, 2011.
Yeah, that's fine. It does seem to be extraordinarily low.
Thank you, Matt. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I'm in transit, so apologies if the audio is subpar. I want to express my gratitude to Jim and the CAC for producing this work. Like Howard, I have some questions about the piece of lithium battery packs and cords, and I guess choosing winners and losers by providing some editorialization. But at the end of the day, I am thankful that the committee did this work, that you produced an informative document that could be a guidepost for a municipality that would like to take action, or a county for that matter, if Lane County would like to take action. I suspect that there are some municipalities represented on our board that would simply take the information and pass it on when appropriate, but maybe pass on the opportunity to take a regulatory action. And I further suspect that the Eugene City Council would be interested in taking a next step based on the work that's in front of us. So if this body is interested in, I don't know why we would need to approve or accept or vote to accept the CAC's informational flyer, but if indeed we are doing so, I would enthusiastically be in the affirmative. But I just want to say thank you, Jim, to you and the committee for doing the work.
Thank you, Matt. I think at this point it was just Jim just needs a consensus of the board to be able to distribute that leaflet, and not acting as a proponent for legislation, but more of an information source for the public. And so what I'm looking for is some head nods or some hands up or whatever, but not an official vote. I'm okay with it too. And thank you, Jim. Go ahead, move forward. Appreciate it. Next order of business is is director's report.
Chair Joe, members of the board, if you want, I don't know how much time you want to spend on this. I could have this available to you to read on your own and contact me with any questions. There's nothing that's out of the ordinary in this report, other than the air quality index was fabulous and on the first page there. But if you want me to skip this, the only other item would be in the new business, and I believe one of the board members, Terry Fitzpatrick, may bring up something in new business, and I had something in old business rather. So, what's your pleasure?
Janine?
Quick question. I'm fine with kind of skipping a detailed review of the director's report. I just had a quick question. When we were in the budget committee, there was potential for a new grant, and I was curious if there was an update on that or if I missed it in the director's report.
Chair Joe, members of the board, yes, thanks, Janine. There was potential for us to get up to $460,000, I think it was, for the American Rescue Plan grant. We were informed within the last 2 weeks, I think it was actually last week, by EPA that we did not qualify for that grant. We actually teamed up with Beyond Toxics as part of the work that was going to be done, and they have already been informed that we did not get that grant. And, you know, we're competing nationwide and there's only so much money.
Sure. Understood. Thank you for that. And I'm sorry that that did not work out for us. And yeah, I'll wait for a new business.
Thank you. If anybody is got any more questions for the director's report, and I think that makes sense, we can read it. We have the whole copy of it. If there's any questions, you can contact Steve Dietrich directly. So thank you, Steve, on that. Next item, number 10, is old business.
Yeah. Chair Joe, members of the board, I had suggested that some of the follow-up questions from the April board meeting, we could cover some of that ground here. I could go into discussions now, or I could actually send out some responses. What's your pleasure on how to act on these? This is just follow-up answers to some of the questions you raised in the April board meeting.
I'm fine with, unless board members disagree, but I'm fine with if you just send out an email of the questions followed up with the answers in an outline format, or whatever format works best would be satisfactory for me. And then that would allow each board member to look at those, and if they have further questions, they can respond back. Is everybody okay with that? Okay, do we got a head nod? Janine, you good with that?
I guess not being entirely sure what was going to be covered on the old business. Does that include the director's evaluation?
Yeah, they would. Chair Joe, members of the board, number 5 was Vice Chair Janine had made a comment about the director's evaluation and what should be presented, as well as the form to use at the next board meeting. So what I intend to do there is to update the form that was chosen and discussed in the April board meeting, and use that as the process and use that as the area to put all the information that I am currently working on to insert into that form, which is a form similar to used by the previous administrator, or the executive director rather, and send that out to the board members well ahead of the June 9th board meeting.
Janine, you have a question?
Yes, thank you. And I think we agreed that that process sounded really good. I think the place where I misunderstood the direction, there were 2 other pieces of feedback that we have looked at in the past. One was the business permittee survey. And I think this board agreed that given the timeline that we would kind of look to do that at a future point in time. And I actually wonder if in the past, the CAC has kind of been our lead. Remember, Maury Denner really kind of took that on, working with the public information officer to reach out to our permittees and get feedback about the level of service and the promptness. And I appreciate that. Even if we don't get a great turnout from our permittees, they're paying money for a service, and it's good for us to know their impression of the service that they get for those funds. So Chair Joe, I don't know how we would speak to that in terms of asking the CAC to work with staff on that as a kind of future item, but I would propose that as potentially something we talk about maybe during the director's report. And then the second piece was the staff input, you know, a 360 evaluation. I think, especially for a board where we don't have direct engagement, very infrequently, once a month, and through this kind of virtual format, I think that that's another valuable piece of information, especially for a brand new director. And I believe that this board should be more interested in hearing from at least the, well, I would say from any employee who chooses to do so, to let us know if they've got feedback or areas for improvement.
Thank you, Janine. So I mean, I concur with the potentially giving the CAC that project of reaching out. I think we talked about, I'm pretty, my old brain, but it's telling me that we talked about that a little bit. And at the time, my brain told me that that sounds fine to me. We just didn't need to make it a, you know, a paid for by consultants, you know, survey monkey, blah, blah, blah thing. And it just would seem to make sense that we would reach out and say, hey, how are we doing? That makes sense. So I support that. And if everybody got a head nod to see if we can ask Jim, because he's right there, to see if he can kind of take that on, as it seems like they've done well with that last project, and we can just hand him something else. All right, Jim, you got that?
Will do.
And, you know, of course, there's been plenty of previous surveys, and I think that for the value proposition is to try to keep the questions similar so you can see trends over time. So hopefully Travis can dig those up from Joe Niehaus when she was there, and those two can kind of, you can put your heads together and try to find some valuable information. So I appreciate that, and thank you, board, for clarifying that that's some work that the CAC could do on our behalf.
Sounds good. Jim, Travis, Steve, everybody good on that?
Yes.
Okay, sounds great. Thanks, Janine. New business. Anything for new business?
Chair Joe, no, that was new business that I kind of paraphrased one of the questions. So,
okay.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Back up. New business is Mr. Fitzpatrick, I believe.
Yes. Terry.
I just would like to, I don't know the proper form for this, but I think we're at the point where we should be meeting in person. Their Zoom meetings are great when we had the pandemic, but you lose so much when you're staring at a screen versus talking to people face to face. I'd just like to move that we hold future meetings in person.
Terry, well, I should say it's been moved. I'd like to have some discussion. Is there a second, or when I have discussion before it's seconded?
I'll second the motion for discussion.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. I'd like to open that up for discussion. I'd like to jump on that immediately. Terry, I've been talking with Steve about that already for the last several weeks in regards to that. There's some technical issues that right now is almost forbidding us to be able to do that because of the by law we have to allow Zoom, and we can't just have everybody in required meetings in person, because we have to, again, by law, allow Zoom participation, so people have the option to come in whether in person or if their preference is Zoom. So having that, then we have to have a room that would be able to accommodate not only in person, but also accommodate the technological connection of Zoom meeting platform as well. So we're working on that, and we're trying to find a solution that's workable, and it's not something that's just gonna, I don't see us going into perpetuity in this as well, but it's something it's got some physical issues right now. But anyway, and Matt, go ahead.
Just a point of clarification, we're still in a public health crisis. We're still experiencing a global pandemic, and the United States reached the million mark. 1 million Americans in the last 2 years have perished because of COVID-19. I think it's inappropriate and unfortunate that the pandemic is being framed as if it's suddenly in the rearview mirror. So I would be concerned that if we're meeting in person, that there would be folks who may not take the public health crisis as serious as I would hope some would. I would hope that folks would want to social distance and mask. And I would hope that we'd have full participation of fully vaccinated individuals. And so until that's realized or further discussed, I'm not in favor of jumping into a full in-person meeting just so we can see each other's faces.
Right. And the nice thing about that, Matt, no one's going to require you to, because the law says you can attend by Zoom anytime you want. Janine, go ahead.
I'm sorry, so did I miss that if we do meet in person, that a hybrid option would be available?
It has to be available by law.
And that worked well for the CAC from a technology standpoint?
Every public meeting, Christine, jump in here, please bail me out.
Yeah, it was a amendment to the Oregon Public Meetings Law by the legislature. And now that the state has rescinded their state of emergency, that has ended, the temporary bill they passed to allow all online only meetings during COVID has gone away. And so now the law is for public meetings to all be essentially hybrid, allowing the public at least an opportunity to attend either way, the way that Chair Piscineri framed it.
Thank you. And I see Mike, go ahead.
So you actually kind of hit the nail on the head. I think allowing folks the option to come or not is the preference. I will say it does seem like we're not making any progress towards working towards those in-person meetings, at least from the sidelines here. So, I mean, I guess I would like to see us, if we don't have it, what, is it expense of the equipment? Is it, I mean, because like I said, our city, I'm sure yours, Joe, I'm sure Eugene, all have set this up to where they can do a hybrid meeting. It's not fun. Let me tell you, running those is a challenge. It's creating a whole lot of new dynamics to meetings. But I certainly support it. I mean, I'm vaccinated and boosted, and I feel comfortable meeting in public. And I guess I would just say that, the question of whether we're still in a pandemic or whether we've actually achieved endemic is one I think that's still being debated. So, at some point, I think the hope, at least for my part, is that it becomes endemic and we can get back to normal. So I certainly would encourage us to make sure that everybody has the choice that works for them. But I'd like to see some progress towards that myself.
Thank you, Mike. And Matt, go ahead.
Thanks. I don't know if it's appropriate to make a motion. I don't know if there's, or an amendment, because I don't know if there's really a motion on the floor.
I don't think it's a motion in regards to what, a meeting?
Yeah, I don't think there's a motion either, so I'll just make my comment.
Okay.
It's in regards, Chair, to the observation that folks have a choice to participate remotely or not, and I thank you for making that clarification. I would be supportive of those who are not fully vaccinated or boosted to be the cohort that would participate remotely.
Yeah, I don't believe Christina helped me, but we can't mandate that. So it's just something
but we can, Chair. We actually can if this body took a vote to do so. We could make a request of participants who are not fully vaccinated or boosted to be those who participate remotely.
Christina, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think it would be legal to make that request, certainly. I am not sure whether the public meetings law would allow enforcement of that type of a requirement if someone were not compliant with the request, if that makes sense. But if the board wants to direct more research on that topic, I'm happy to take it back to Mary Bridget and discuss with her. But I believe the public meetings law currently requires providing the option. I don't know that it allows legal enforcement of that.
Thank you. Yes, that's my understanding as well. Okay, so it's great discussion. I know that Steve and I have talked about it. I know that we're going to be giving out or sending out some further information as that's learned. It's just been a slow go at this point because we've been so busy with the budget and et cetera. So Steve, we'll see if we can't get a plan put together and give update to the board on that in the meetings.
Chair Joe, yes, I will add that we have been actually starting to take an inventory of facilities that could accommodate a hybrid format. And so that we know not only for this purpose, but for our own purposes with facilities that we have to have public notices for permitting.
Correct. It may be that there's some city space that's already got the hardware in place that we can take a look at, you know, either city or whatever city or county, some public facility. So, all right. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, Mike.
Point of order. Sorry to jump in. We did have a motion with the second. I would really feel better if we had a withdrawal of those from the
yeah,
both sides of that.
Who made the motion?
Terry. And a second by Janine. I would just request that we withdraw it for now and work on it.
Oh, that's right.
I'm okay with that. Yeah.
It's been so long, I forgot you made the motion. Dang it. I'm sorry. So are you withdrawing that, Terry?
Yes, I withdraw the motion.
Okay. The motion has been withdrawn for further review, and we'll be getting back to the board with more information. Excellent. Thank you, Mike, for reminding me. I apologize. Anything else from new business? Okay. So thank you all for this extended meeting. I apologize for letting it go this far, but we covered a lot of things, and I hope everybody got their questions answered satisfactorily with the time we had. So, all right, it's 1:52. I'm going to call this meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye,
everyone. Bye.
Everyone.